All right. So, welcome, Andre. I'm kind of surprised you didn't pull up in the Bucky suit today.
It's in the backpack. We'll put it on at the end.
Okay, sounds good. So I actually met Andre through Latin dance or salsa and bachata practices at the University of Texas through Texas Latin Dance. We both have an interest in salsa and bachata dancing. I'm more keen to salsa dancing, and Andre apparently loves bachata. so,
This is true. This is true.
um, so Andre, one of the first memories I have of us is us starting to talk about general business overall. You were kind of asking me about my real estate career, and you started telling me a little bit more about your bike shop and how all of that worked. So, do you just want to give a quick rundown of who you are, what your bike shop's about, how you've gotten to the point where you are, and if you want to just throw some like figures in there to make it like easier on like just a random person tuning in, like why would they listen to you essentially?
Sure. It's a lot of information to toss out. I guess we can backpedal a little bit. Pun intended. Backpedal to start of college. That was COVID for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I was class of 2020 coming out of high school. And I pretty much needed for a way to pay for tuition. And coming off of my experience, I used to race mountain bikes pretty competitively for like 4 or 5 years and learn how to work on bikes effectively, um, fixing problems that came up just in my garage with our tools. Then COVID came along and every single bike shop in town got flooded with demand just because of the social distancing elements. People decided to ride bikes all of a sudden.
Mm-hmm.
So every bike shop got flooded with service inquiries, with new parts, with bikes being purchased. And in 2019, the analysts were expecting a slower year, so there was pretty much a massive mismatch of supply and demand. Um, and I just went to Facebook. There's a Austin mountain biking Facebook group, and put out an ad saying, "I'm 17 years old, and I'll fix your bike in 24 hours, or it's going to be 50% off."
Hmm.
So we had this guarantee working. Um, it was at my parents' garage, and that's kind of how I'm still based right now.
Mm-hmm.
So it was off of the principle of 24-hour turnaround guaranteed or 50% off. And a lot of people started kind of testing the waters, if you will, like bringing in their bikes into for smaller repairs, just trying to level out, I guess, the risk reward of bringing a bike that costs $5,000 to $10,000 for a 17-year-old to work out,
Mm-hmm.
just in exchange for getting their bike back sooner instead of having to wait 3 or 4 weeks, going
Mm-hmm.
the conventional route with other shops. So that was 2020, and I was doing that in parallel to classes online at UT San Antonio
Mm-hmm.
and Austin Community College. So I was kind of balancing classes there, um, trying to figure out the cheapest way to finish my marketing degree, and had the bike shop paying for it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of how that came to life. And fast forward, what is that, 3.5 years now?
Mm-hmm.
We're operating. We are, well, it's myself primarily, and then some employee guys who step in sometimes. But it's a bike shop where we have a service department. I do a lot of like custom builds, used bike sales, and stuff, all on the premium side of the mountain bike market. So we
Mm-hmm.
exclusively work with mountain bikers, and that's just around the Austin and Central Texas area.
Okay, awesome. So, um, backtracking a little bit more, you said you were at UTSA and ACC. How old are you now, roughly?
I'm about to turn 21.
You're about to turn 21.
Yeah, it's a big
That is
age.
exciting. And um, if you feel comfortable with sharing, what are some of the figures you started seeing, and how did this really affect your perspective of money and how you viewed money as you started seeing a little bit more success?
Sure. So, year one of business, I guess the first full year of just tax declarations, that was around 240,000
Mm.
of top line revenue. Um, and year two, we went down on revenue, went up on profits.
Mm.
And year three, I haven't actually filed my taxes yet, so
So we'll
I
see.
I don't know, but I think it's between 250 and 300K.
Okay. Wow.
Um, so yeah.
That's quite a bit. And do you feel like whenever you were first acquiring this money, did you see the temptation to spend a lot of it? Were you more focused on increasing your business overall? What was the thought process going in through your head as you were seeing all these funds and just knowing that you had a business expenses, personal expenses, life expenses, but I'm pretty sure you also had some dreams and desires that you were kind of wanting to spend all this money on too.
It's it's actually interesting. For the first year of business, I didn't have any prior like legitimate business experience. I had some little like just startup product shenanigans leading up to it.
Hmm.
But I didn't have any like defined business structure, so I was kind of going off of it just with the flow of like, oh, I know I kind of made some money there, made some money here. Started keeping track of like little spreadsheet of just customer names, service jobs, date, transaction type,
Hmm.
etc. But I didn't know what I was making at all up until the end of that first year. I filed my taxes, and it was I think it was between like 210,000 and 260,000 top line. And I
Wow.
saw that number and I was like, wow, I didn't even know. So
So
the money was good.
yeah, go for it.
No,
Finish.
no, it's like the money was just kind of like a byproduct of doing something that I enjoy doing.
Yeah.
Because I was in the mountain biking field, racing through my high school years, and the community in general is like really cool amongst mountain bikers. Like everybody is just super nice and always just down to earth, cool people, and it helped having like a common hobby with all these guys.
Mm-hmm.
And from my perspective, I was solving a problem for these guys where they didn't have to live 3, 4, 5 weeks without their bike,
Hmm.
um, in exchange for bringing it over to me. And it's like, granted, yeah, I'm a 17, 18-year-old kid who doesn't have that much experience, but they get their bike back in 24 hours, and it's that simple.
Yeah.
So, um, yeah, the money was just a byproduct, and I didn't really have any overhead expenses.
Hmm.
Like I'd have to buy some tools, maybe order some parts sometimes if a customer needed something.
Hmm.
But operating from my parents' garage, there was no overhead business expenses, which helped get off the ground significantly quicker.
Yeah.
And my living expenses, like I don't really go out much during COVID, so it's like everything was just either in a Venmo, PayPal, you know, Chase account, whatever.
Hmm. That's cool. So I'm like hearing this, and I'm trying to get a little bit more familiarized with what's actually goes into the bike business. You were talking about top line revenue, which is essentially your sales or how much you ended up like receiving from customers, but then you also have your expenses there.
Exactly.
And those expenses, talk to me a little bit more through that. You were talking about parts. You said that you didn't really have any overhead, so you didn't really have to pay rents for like a building. You didn't really have to. I'm guessing you might have had like a stand that kind of helps you work on these or like certain tools. What it was the biggest expense you saw in running this business, and do you feel like you had an adequate amount of experience with this expense, or do you feel like it took you by surprise?
You know, there's the business is divided into several different income flows,
Mhm.
and it started off with like before I came up with the brand name of Andre Bike Shop. Quite literally, I was looking for a cheap way to fund my racing addiction, if you will. It's like
Yeah.
bikes are expensive, and well, just to give context for people who aren't in the loop on the industry, like if you want to get a high end mountain bike, um, capable of racing per se, not even capable, just stacking up to what other people are riding. Out the door, brand new, you're spending anywhere from like $5,000 to $8,000,
Mhm.
and if you
Wow.
want to buy something really nice, you can spend up to 14,000.
Whoa.
So it's quite pricey. A lot of people joke around about having a bike that costs more than their car.
Yeah.
And being in the racing field, my parents weren't ever like, here's a ton of money. It was just like kind of, I think originally when I first started racing, my dad was like, here's $200. Go buy a bike. And so pretty much I got into this like habit of searching for stuff, and I quickly got really consumed by the industry of trying to find good deals on secondhand equipment. And where I'm going with all this is that I developed to a point just for my personal racing to where I would buy a frame or I'd buy a complete bike and I'd sell everything but the frame. I'd
Mhm.
end up with a free frame, just recouping costs on that. And then buy a complete bike, sell everything but the wheels, and have a free set of wheels and build up a bike like this.
Mhm.
And then after I did that a few times, I was like, wait, I can actually make money off of this.
Mhm.
So it was kind of real estate scaled down to the mountain biking industry.
Mhm.
Uh, and then that was probably the biggest expense. Every time it's like, you draw out, $2, $3, $4,000 to buy parts, assemble a bike, and then sell it a little bit higher. So those are the steady expenses coming in. Those are obviously eating away at the top line revenue.
Yeah.
And then the actual service side of things, all of the tools were acquired slowly over time. So it wasn't like a lump sum purchase. Like the most money I ever spent for a toolkit was probably like $60.
Okay.
So yeah.
Well, that's quite a bit. You went down and you essentially broke down what the hobby of biking is. I have come to realize that it is a very big thing. So I have my roommate, and he's had friends over, and these guys train for triathlon. So I always see him posting on Strava
That gets
about how
pricey
he's,
as well.
huh?
That gets pricey as well.
Yeah. How these people are like starting to ride 50 miles like a day, and it's like pretty intense. It's a pretty intense sport, and I've noticed that a lot of people that are active. So I've noticed within within my field and industry, which is real estate, that's one of the big things that a lot of people don't talk about is their other hobbies within the industry. So, for example, I've met a lot of people through the different hobbies that I have, whether that be jujitsu, salsa dancing, hip hop dancing, bachata dancing, MMA, um, marathon training, and triathlon training. I didn't realize like how much correlation there were in these fields, and I never really thought about it, but someone once mentioned to me how the reason that you meet so many of these people that are pretty well off is because the hobby isn't a cheap hobby to have. It's a pretty pricey one. And like it with what you're saying with that joke, there's people who have invested thousands of dollars, and that disposable income has to either come creatively. You have to find a way to make those parts work and kind of fix your bike up in a way that's not using too much of your income, or you have to fund it via other sources. And I noticed like there was this one time where I was on a boat party talking with one of my salsa friends, and uh, he brought like two of his random friends that I didn't know, and they were like older guys, roughly in their 30s, or not older, but they're older than everyone else there. And I was just talking with them, and they were both commercial brokers. So I didn't really realize how many people were within these hobbies. So working with these mountain bikes and what is known to be a more expensive hobby, it's certainly not like a zero cost hobby that you could just enter at any point in time. Do you feel like you've started to meet people that you wouldn't have met otherwise?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a pretty big divide in the range of customers you deal with, and it's like everybody from people who are, hooked on mountain biking from whatever childhood ideals, and maybe not the most financially well off, but they know the fun of it, so they'll get onto like a financing plan and get a bike that fits budget. And then being in Austin, which is pretty cool, it's like some high executive people or CEOs will drop in, and it's like we'll start chatting a little about something, and we got an in common hobby. So it's like I found it pretty neat to where it's a really easy connection point where you're solving an issue for them, they're here for business for you, and then it's like they don't mind to chat a little bit. You've got an in common thing you can talk about. They don't mind sharing insight as well. So there's certainly like a wide demographic of people, and as I said, some like executives popping in, CEOs, and oftentimes I don't find out about who they are or what they do after like 3 or 4 visits, and I'm like, well, that person is that right there. Like, come again.
Yeah.
So
it is pretty interesting. Like, sometimes I feel like people can be flashy, but then there's also like the silent killers, as I like to refer to them. There's like just like some people who have just, if you're in the industry, you know them, but if you're not, they're just like a regular common Joe walking down the street.
yeah.
And like for example, one of my mentors, he's always in like shorts and a cap, and he's always he's not really doing much other than real estate. So you see him in like churches, you see him in like maybe in his own projects, but he's not typically like going out and about unless it's like for church events. And um, a lot of people know of him uh, like within the Dripping Springs area as the real estate guy. And he owns like $30 million of land. And it's super crazy to see because it's just someone that you go to church with or someone that may have like a fascinating hobby. And I also want to see how have these experiences affected you and how have you started implementing maybe some of their business strategies or some of their philosophies into your life, into your own business, and maybe into like your investment goals.
Sure. So there's quite a few different avenues we can go down here. A lot of it has come together where it's outright a cool network of people where it's like they stop by and talk about any random conversation topic. It's no longer like say like a transactional thing. It's more so just a buddy stopping by, and I'm his bike mechanic who knows how to fix it, get it done right. We settle up and then we go on a ride together. We grab coffee, whatever. And some of the I guess things that have came to fruition is one of the guys we ended up co-founding a retail project with him over the summer. So that was cool. Where it's like just meeting another entrepreneur who's got some goals working out, and they were like, "Hey, like here's an idea. Both of us have these different strong suits. Let's lease out this lot of land, get some employees coming in, and see if we can make some money." So like some co-partnerships that have formed from that. And then on the other front of things, I'd say probably the most reoccurring thing I hear from people is raise your prices, raise your prices, raise your prices. And yeah, I mean, I've followed some advices, and it's fun. You chat to a lot of people, and then maybe I'd say one of my biggest hiccups that I did early on was that I didn't know I had to collect sales tax on a service, because just my logic, I'm 17 and I'm like, well, I'm doing a service for somebody, and sales tax in its name implies that if you sell something, then you get 8.25% on top of that. So I filed my first like round of taxes, which is like 3 months, last 3 months of 2020, I think. And then I filed my 2021 taxes where we had that $250,000 number. And in a few weeks after submitting, I get this call from the comptroller office in Texas. And they're like, "Hey, we've gotten word that you're operating as Andrei Bike Shop, and we haven't seen any sales tax payments from you." So I got a bit of an audit coming in, and pretty much I had to pay a lot of fees, pay for every single service that I didn't collect sales tax on over the past year and a half. That was pretty brutal, but it's like you live some, you learn some in a sense. Dang. And from that experience, it was like, okay, I've got this group of people. I have this accountant. I have this guy who's a tax specialist. And you reach out to them and you're like, "Hey man, like I've got this bit of a problem." And they're always happy to chat because like you're effectively a friend. You're also somebody they bring their bikes to work on. Maybe you go on a group ride sporadically. And they have their field of specialty. And when I ran into that hiccup, like my parents didn't really have much to say. They're like, "Well, this sucks. Can you like try and see if there's any sort of exemption for just the ignorance of being young?" But that is not. That does not. Uncle Sam does not. Forgive.
Uncle Sam does not play. Yeah, taxes are like a little bit of weird subject. I've tried to convince my mom to get a little bit more familiarized with it. I have started forming an LLC, especially for not tax evasion, but for tax shelters or tax. Some people call it tax avoidance. And I read this book by Tom Wheelwright called Tax Free Wealth, and it talked a lot about how taxes were essentially jail sentences, like for a lot of people. If you really think about it, if you're working an average W-2 job, in a developed country, you're spending close to, I can't remember the exact number, but it was either 20 years or 40 years of your life solely working to pay taxes. And that is an insane number. So whenever there's talk about business owners, I really like talking with them to see kind of what some of their strategies are. Real estate is one of the big, I guess, tax havens for a lot of people. A lot of people go into real estate because there is different ways to essentially reduce your tax bill as much as possible. And for a lot of people, it's very boring because no one wants to talk about taxes. It's one of the most boring things that someone could talk about. But what I learned from the book, Tax Free Wealth, is that you could essentially make it a game at a certain point. And you can start finding little ways to lower your tax bill through growth purposes. Because in reality, the United States and Texas, especially, they want to see businesses grow. They want to see entrepreneurship flourish. And they have incentives, but it is typically our ignorance that doesn't know about these incentives because it wasn't taught in our current school system. Personal finances aren't really talked about. My mom, she works at a tax servicing company, and she always talks about how like people are so lost when they're doing their taxes for the first time. And I'm pretty sure it's like a common experience within all of us. And it's quite scary because like if you hear stories like yours and like people start getting scared, like, oh my goodness, I can't start a business now because I don't want to get hit with a $40,000 bill. But then you also come to realize that that risk is also mitigated by the sheer amount of quality and quantity that you're doing, of sales and revenue. So you had the good thing is that you had a little bit of a buffer and you weren't like spending like crazy. You weren't living above your means or you weren't blowing it. So you had a little bit of money, and then the IRS is like, hey, give me some of that. So
I gave them some of that, and then they calmed down. It wasn't the IRS; it was the comptroller office.
Oh yes, the comptroller.
So, and since then, every quarter I log in diligently, and get my payments in. So but yeah, there's something to be said about kind of in the United States. What I find interesting is that it's not. It's easier to start any sort of company, any sort of business. There's not as much bureaucracy in line. Like, you see 13, 14-year-old kids running around neighborhoods, selling lawn mowing services and stuff. And there isn't anybody actively, chasing them for their tax dollars. There's, as I've seen it amongst different people, there's a bit like of a buffer period. Like if you don't make a ridiculous amount of money, you can kind of get away with just trying out a business idea before having to worry about, oh, am I insured? Do I have this LLC? Do I have all these different things? Obviously it helps. And if you start getting to a certain scale, you probably should have insurance just in case if something happens. Like for small different startup ideas, it's like you can really kind of dive into it and start trying to generate revenue, profit, whatever. And once it actually works, if it does, then you want to jump in and actually get caught up with registrations. And getting taxes done and stuff.
A lot of people talk about how it's the first step, and I understand how it might be the first step to a lot of people, but that is typically once their business is a little bit higher level, like higher service level. So an example could be like there's low service level and high service level items, and like car detailing, anything that's like probably blue collar, anything mechanical. Like you could kind of get away with like a few jobs here and there, but if you're operating as a startup company and the startup company is acquiring investors and getting millions of dollars, and you're having to handle other people's money, there is certain regulations that you kind of have to pay attention to, and that is like a different conversation for a different skill set of person, or a different person with different skill sets. So for the average, like a little bit more labor intensive service based industries, we see that it's a little bit easier to start first and then worry about it. But if like some people might like kind of hear that and be like, oh, but what about these industries? So it's like I'm in a sense like providing that little caveat, like yes, but this exception. So
sure. Well, it depends on scale. I guess I misused the word startup there. Like it just depends on the magnitude of what you're doing. Like if you're offering tutoring services on a college campus, you can get away with just trying to, like, nobody says you can't put up a banner or make an Instagram page or put some Facebook ads saying, hey y'all, I'm offering tutoring services. I do X, Y, and Z. And it's not like, as soon as you get paid 40, $50, whatever, you immediately get a call from Uncle Sam saying, hey, you know, give me my cut. It's
Yeah.
more so like you have to get to a certain point. And if it's actually working as an idea, it's like then you can stress about all the different legal frameworks and stuff.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, it's like I have a buddy, his name is Rhett, and he just started a bike park in Marble Falls where he pretty much found an investor for a $3 million lot of land and crowdsourced around 350K to
Mm.
get this off the ground. They launched November 1st, and it's been pretty successful since then. That's an example where, like, if you want somebody to pay you effectively $3 million,
Yeah.
you've got to have your LLC, you've got to have your business plan, you've got to
Yeah.
have all these things in line. But just for your average, just like, let me try and start a little side hustle.
Yeah.
Taxes and overall registration in the US is a lot easier than in other countries, at least from what I've taken off of people I've talked to who've tried
Yeah.
starting businesses elsewhere.
Yeah. Cool.
Uh,
So now tell us like a little bit more of like your vision, like with the company. What do you really plan out of Andre Bikes? Do you want to keep being a key person within the business? Do you want to eventually scale it to a point where you're out of the business? I saw that you took some trips recently and you were traveling all around the world.
yeah. It's interesting. That's kind of something I'm trying to figure out for myself right now.
Hmm.
It's been a cool ride. Like originally, I genuinely just the only purpose of Andre Bike Shop was, can I make some money to pay for college tuition?
Yeah.
And then once it started, it was like, oh no, this is pretty cool. And I ended up finishing college at UTSA like all during COVID. I graduated at 19, I think. Yeah, 19. And the bike shop kind of just continued from there, where it's like, okay, I've got my diploma now, I've hit this goal, and I've got a bike shop which has scaled up to where it's just everything is word of mouth. Every single person who's come to me is just as a result of somebody else referencing. We've never spent a dollar on marketing or anything like that. So it's been a cool experience, but I also simultaneously feel like I've hit the roof of what can be done. Like I've branched out with Under Bike Shop. It started off exclusive as service and used bike sales,
Hmm.
and then what it ended up leading to is that just through people I've met, I ended up opening up an e-commerce store on Amazon, eBay. That opened up experiences. I started offering consulting for Amazon, eBay stores, and then that was one route. And then amongst the service industry, we started offering lessons. We started offering rentals. We started offering consultation calls for like if you want to talk about upgrades or this or that.
Hmm.
Here's an hourly rate. Schedule a call with Andre
Hmm.
right here. So I've been kind of trying to find different avenues of where I can potentially take this bike business next.
Hmm.
But in all honesty, I'm kind of like, we're young, recent college grads. It's like there's a lot of more industries to explore.
Yeah.
And it's cool that the way that I have my job laid out allows me to go travel around the world, as you said, to where I can kind of bend my schedule a little bit without
Hmm.
having to talk to a manager or a boss. But at the same time, I'm looking for a next step to where maybe the roof isn't 250, 300,
Hmm.
but I can possibly scale up to like 1 million to $10 million a year, which is just pretty much impossible within the bike shop industry.
Okay. Awesome. So now to retract a little bit,
Yeah.
you're making this experience sound awesome, and I kind of want to also give like a little bit of deeper understanding of like what it actually took to create this business. Like, what are some of the experiences that people don't really see? Like I remember one of the first times we talked about it, you were talking about how you worked long hours and how that was essentially just your life for a good minute.
Yeah, hours were were a thing. There was a lot of time management trying to figure out, just pretty much balancing out these different income flows, trying to figure out how can I free up time in my schedule and also not be in a stagnation point to it. There was a point where I was like, this is cool, but this is the job. This isn't really a business.
Hmm.
You're just owning the hours. You're effectively clocking in, but you're clocking into yourself as a manager,
Hmm.
not going into like a pizza job and clocking in there and working your hours. So you're effectively picking your own hours, and how much you invest is the amount of time you get out of it, money you get out of it.
Yeah.
So that's where the bike shop got to. And I was trying to kind of not lose customers, but also have time to try and figure out how to grow it beyond what it was. And as a result, I ended up spending a lot of time, just on a weekly basis. It was like 75 to 90 hours a week, I think.
Hmm.
Just pretty much nonstop working, either hopping from service to delivering, mails and stuff, mails, delivering bikes to post offices, being on consulting calls and researching different avenues, looking down, potentially getting employees in and stuff like that.
Hmm.
So lots of time allocated, um, but it was all an effort to try and free up time, which ultimately did work out to where I'm at right now.
Okay, awesome. And what do you feel was like the big thing that really gave you your time back? Was it the hiring of your first employee? Was it implementing better systems? What was like the big
Raising
real,
prices,
huh?
raising prices.
Raising prices.
Yeah, people didn't like. It narrows down whenever quite literally 2x the cost of working with you.
Yeah.
You kind of you lose some customers, but those who stick around are those who know that you do good work,
Hmm.
or they keep coming in, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, I'm spending twice less time, I'm making the exact same amount of money.
Yeah.
And you're working with a higher echelon of customers where generally they're not penny picking of like, oh, no, like, let me think about spending $30 on this.
Yeah.
It's more so just like, do everything you need. I trust you. Write me a bill at the end. You
Mm.
send them the bill, you itemize it, and they pay the check.
Yeah.
So,
Tim Ferriss, actually, it might not be Tim Ferriss, but he has this rule that he likes to talk about. I believe it's called Pareto's Law, which is the 80-20 principle. And I'm not sure if it was Tim Ferriss or someone else that talked about one of the things is that 80% of your issues come from 20% of your sources. So essentially, what you did in this scenario was like a certain portion of your customers were willing to pay higher, and because 80 they provided like 80% of it was like 20% of your new customers provided 80% of your revenues, basically freeing up a lot of your time. And that also allowed you to give better service and clear and more concise like understanding. Like I feel at once you're kind of at the point of overwhelm, it's good to start like taking off the big stressors. And typically the big stressors are the penny pickers. Like it's like the people that have a lot of issues with like your service, that are questioning your service. And it is like nice to sometimes work with higher levels of clientele because they at times just pay a little bit better, and on top of that they trust the service a little bit more.
yeah, you highlighted pretty well. It's nice to have customers who have more money. That's
Yeah,
the baseline. But at the same time, there's something to be said about all other customers. There's people out there. It's like it takes a while for them to gain the trust of like,
that is true.
if this person is telling me that this thing is broken and needs to be replaced or it's worn down,
Mhm.
it's like what percent of that is them trying to make another $20 off of me?
Yeah,
And that trust relationship you have to foster it.
yeah,
And to that point, what's interesting with how Under Bike Shop was set up, like one of the hurdles I ran into was, since I'm set up in my parents' garage, um, no like legitimate brands would sign me as a dealer for their parts
hmm,
because they want an actual storefront and
yeah,
certain hours and stuff. So it was based exclusively on service. The entire business, I mean, that's say was it is based on service, and there's no incentive for me to upsell people on, oh well, you shouldn't, service is like, we should just buy you a new one, that sort of deal.
yeah,
So there's not as much upselling going on to where I'm making my money off of every additional part I'm selling.
hmm,
Every source of revenue is coming from service, and people kind of understand that, to my knowledge at least, and it just translates to a more honest experience where it's like, generally speaking, if you go to a car dealer or a car auto shop, a lot of stigma in society is like, oh, I'm going there and I'm about to get
scam.
scammed. Yeah.
Yeah,
And I feel like a lot of people get that same mentality carried over to a lot of other
yeah,
industries, and where people don't have incentive to upsell, it's like they come to me and I'm just like, well, yeah, we can replace it. And the industry's probably going to say that it's due for replacement. But for what it's worth, like, your drivetrain is shifting smoothly. Um, voice cracks, kind of. Your drivetrain is shifting smoothly.
mhm,
Gears are functioning. Like, yeah, it's worn down based on whatever manufacturer said, but it's working well. It's not causing any problems. It's going to cost $1,000 to replace it, but like, if you're not the type of person who cares to replace it, it's like,
Yeah.
you can keep riding and enjoy the bike, you know?
Yeah.
And that sort of thing is what I think got the snowball effect going, of where people are like, no, like, this guy's honest right here, and telling all of their riding buddies about it.
Mm-hmm.
And next day, I know there's 5-6 messages coming in through my website saying like, hey, so and so recommended you. Please, I've got these problems right here. Schedule me in.
Yeah.
And with scheduling in parallel to my college classes,
Yeah.
I was able to pick out, okay, maybe I'm free on Thursday or Friday, and I know for a fact I can do the 24-hour turnaround there,
Mm-hmm.
and I just pick out customers like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I also agree, like within the certain industries, it is very hard to essentially build trust within a lot of people. And it's because people kind of have just like the fear of the unknown. Like sometimes whenever I look at a car, my mom would get mad at me for this quite a bit, but she would be like, dude, watch what the mechanic is doing. Because if you don't watch, you might be scamming you. And and I would watch carefully. So there's a few times where I feel like I kind of had like first world problems. I didn't really know what was going on, and I also had that same like fear-based mentality. But it is easier to over question someone to kind of test their truthfulness or their honesty, rather than like be okay with just blindly trusting everyone with the service that they're giving you. And I I give my hats off to you, because a lot of people don't have the patience to be questioned quite frequently, or like as frequently. And it is very hard for a lot of people to really give trust with money and service, because a lot of the times it's unknown what they're paying for. Are they getting overcharged for service, or is this the actual cost of the part? And it's like something that you don't really know unless you're constantly in the industry. Like myself, I get to see a lot of things that are real estate based. And I'll know if someone's like overcharging for a certain service, or I'll know if someone's overcharging like as a contractor, or a subcontractor, or a general contractor. And I'll kind of just like understand this. And this is from like conversations that I've heard and understood, and just have had with like mentors and other people within the industry. But it's also because I've been in the industry for roughly 4 years now. For someone who might be entering it, they don't really know what's going on in this industry. So I understand exactly where you're going with that. How it's at no fault to the consumer, but rather it's something that only like a seasoned industry professional could really help in. So now I kind of want to shift gears a little bit more, to let people know a little bit more of the fun side of you. So yeah, so we met roughly a year ago, kind of close to a year ago.
Yeah, year and a half or so.
Yeah.
Texas Latin Dance social.
Yeah,
I think,
we met at a Texas Latin Dance event.
Yeah.
And I kind of just wanted to see your journey through that. Like, how has it been just kind of balancing it? Where did you really realize like you wanted to try it out, and where did you realize that you wanted to continue like mingling within like this group? How did you get to mix like Andrei the bike mechanic to Andrei the
it's
dance?
a little bit of back context here, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
So with college during COVID, that was like a lot of stuff. I went a bit of an unconventional route with studying. I laid out a bit of a degree plan during COVID, combined between Austin Community College and the UTSA, and pretty much doubled up on classes and did nonstop fall, spring, summer semesters, which got me through school in 2 years total. And in parallel, the bike shop to that, to where my schedule is kind of all over the place. I get up at 6, I do online school till like 12, something that I have to drive to campus to take an exam. And then from like 12 to like 7 p.m., I'd be working in the garage on bikes, fulfilling orders, talking to customers, etc.
Mm-hmm.
So there was not a lot of time for socializing there at all. And it's kind of college years are considered the hot years of your life where you meet those connections, you make the memories that you talk about when you're 50 years old at a dinner table. And I kind of like
the cliche.
Yeah, well, the cliche. And I kind of just took like a fat 180 around all of that, And once I finished up my degree, I was like, well, it's cool. I've got this diploma that says my name, says my specialty or whatever that's defined by.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got a business that's working, but like every single friend that I have that I've built, over the years, whatever, from high school, we've always been chatting about like, oh, when I free up with college and all this, we can go travel, we can do all this stuff. And as soon as I finished college, all of them disappeared, going out of state to start their college journey. So I was like, well, I don't really have any friends here.
Yeah.
There's like a few superficial people or somebody who I can call up. Like the general social circle I had was non-existent, effectively.
Yeah.
I had my diploma, I had a job that was working well, said business, and I needed to fill in that social gap. So I pretty much went to Instagram, started looking for different organizations and stuff.
Yeah.
And that led me to the UT campus, where I kind of just pulled up at the first week of school, and nobody really questions if you're a student or not.
Yeah.
And you kind of just start chatting to people, and it's like, oh, there's like a pizza party going on there. Let me go and start talking to these guys. So I got involved inside of 2 organizations. First one was Planet Longhorn.
Oh yeah, the foreign exchange.
They literally had a pizza club, like a pizza thing set up on the lawn in front of UT. And I was like, let's go talk to them. And I'm like, okay, cool. And then they're like, oh, come tomorrow. We have this event. So I showed up to every event, and then it's cool. And then we had a mixer with Planet Longhorn and Texas Latin Dance.
Ooh.
And I showed up. I was like, I've always wanted to try to learn how to dance. Like, I have a background in guitar and singing. And I'm like, I like music. I like to move my body. Let's see if I can combine the two together.
Yeah.
So I show up to that first lesson. And unironically, the president, Peter, at the time.
Oh, yeah, Peter. He was also a triathlete.
So at the end of the first meeting, I walked up to him and I'm like, hey, this is like really cool stuff. I'm trying to get him to know a bit better, see if I can get into the club without being a student.
Mm-hmm.
And so Peter ended up being a former customer from Andrei Bike Shop. So I introduced myself, and he's like, wait, are you Andrei, like the guy who works on bikes out of his garage? And I was like, yeah. So I ended up sticking with TLD, and now I'm on the back end-ish side of things. And we did the performance dance team last year. That was pretty sick.
Yeah.
So there's kind of a lack of social activities that brought me to UT. And I guess indirectly sitting here talking to you.
Yeah. I guess so. Yeah, it is pretty interesting. I feel like we've always, like within UT, there is so much diversity. There's so many groups and there's so many activities. I've constantly got into this little notion of having too many activities to do. And I like it and I hate it at the same time, because I'm like, oh, I want to do all this cool stuff, but I can't. I got priorities. I have goals that I want to focus on. Even though I really want to be really, really good at salsa dancing.
I've seen you dance. You're plenty good, man.
Huh?
I've seen you dance. You're plenty good.
Yeah.
I want to putting golf into dips and stuff. Balling out, man.
Yeah, I want to get really good. Like I want to. I have this like super competitive personality within myself, and sometimes within other people. I try to keep it within myself, because it's not always healthy to keep it with other people. But overall, I see people that I look up to. I'm like, whoa, these guys are really good dancers. They have really good control of their body. They know how to do some crazy spins and maneuvers, and they know how to twist their bodies in ways that I don't really know how to. And this applies to like jiu-jitsu and dance. Like I've seen, or MMA and dance. And I've seen and kind of people just work at these crafts that they have, and I find it cool because I have school, I have work, I have my future career to worry about, and it is my main focus. It is what I tend to spend most of my time on. It is why I created this podcast, so people could understand me a little bit more and understand my goals and vision and journey throughout.
We got to get an interview going with you at some point.
Maybe.
Swap spots.
Yeah, I think I did a solo interview that's gonna be edited pretty soon. So, or by the time this gets posted, it might already be up.
Who knows?
Yeah. So that was like how I took a year off of school and uh basically try to go chase real estate, and now I'm back in school. Womp womp.
It's all ahead of you, man. All ahead of you.
Yeah. But it has led to like some pretty remarkable like encounters. Like I feel because I took that year off of school, I was able to delve into a lot more of my hobbies on a easier timeline. I wasn't always like stressed, and I was able to build social interactions. And yeah, I also had that effect. I wasn't a student, but people like don't question it at UT.
Yeah, that's kind of how we met.
Yeah, we
I was
were
like,
both
"Wait,
not
you're not a
students at the
student
time.
either?"
That is true. And we would just go to these events and just like dance our butts off. Yeah,
Pretty much,
that's yeah. But that's pretty hilarious. Wow, this is what a weird full circle moment.
yeah, it's wild. But no, you made a point on kind of prioritization and having a lot of things, and I think that's very common amongst.
Yeah,
I mean, people in general. If we just even leave out Gen Z from the picture, it's like everybody has these like magnificent ideas of like, I want to do this, I want to do that, but I don't have time for it.
Yeah.
And it does run into priorities of like,
yeah,
not everybody's confidently able to share their screen time because you look at it and it's like, oh, you're spending 7-8 hours a day
yeah,
on your phone, out of which probably 5 or 6 can be just negligibly cut out. And
yeah,
all of a sudden you have this time, and that's like probably the biggest thing into
yeah,
like as a road stopper, be that for business, for hobbies, or anything. It's just like if you cut the BS out of your life and you're like, hey, let me just actually shoot a shot at this idea right here. The next thing you know, you're swinging your butt around the tennis floor.
yeah.
So
You sing your better.
well, hey, that's how you put it.
Yeah, yeah. I do feel like going on these like little hiatuses of not having social media uh, is something that's kind of helped me with that, because I gotta admit it, I am pretty bad. I am horrible with social media.
It's addicting. You start scrolling and
Yeah,
you're just
yeah.
like,
It's
oh.
you start doom scrolling. Me and my friends have this funny thing going where sometimes we'll send memes and then we're like, this is the 5th meme that Gabriel has sent me in the past half hour. So then we'll call each
But
other.
that can be healthy, yeah.
Yeah. We'll call each other and we'll be like, I saw you were doom scrolling, and we'll both be like, yeah, I need to get up. I need to get some homework done or some work done. And it's kind of like a cheap fix. Like sometimes I like to think of it as this is what you're doing instead of becoming the person that you want to be. And sometimes it really comes down to like a big like crossroads for me, because the big thing with me is I want to start posting a lot of content and I want to have like a lot of social media, but how do I do this while not engaging in social media? So
Delegate.
yeah, you do delegate. So I'm kind of getting in like to the process of that, and it is pretty interesting to kind of like see how I could kind of rely on someone to really focus in on posting and kind of being on that social media side, but myself remaining off of it, because I don't know, that little black box is like a
Everybody
dark
has
hole.
discipline except for social media.
Yeah. And like we'll find like ways to like justify it really bad, but yeah. So now transitioning back, you reached out to me and started talking about your desire in investing in real estate. What is kind of like your vision with that? Where do we hope to see you in a year or two?
Probably out of the bike business. That's
Really?
that's a personal goal. Let's put it not even a goal. It's just like
Like still running it, but just not in it?
no, just stop.
Wow.
In general. It's interesting. Like with real estate, the reason I reached out to you in the first place is it's like there's this like ignorance net, if you will, of like just literally not knowing different fields. And I feel like I've gotten very accustomed to the cycling field, and I can talk anybody's ear off about anything mountain bike, just
Mhm.
bike related in general. But there's transferable skills from that, like just business development, management, marketing, finances, accounting. All of that has some carryover.
Mhm.
But to a certain extent, as I said, there's like a roof that I feel like I've hit a while back now, honestly, within this bike shop setup. And the next step up is opening up a retail location. But that kind of delves into a different realm of just not really making sense right now amongst how the
Mhm.
industry is doing. But I'm pretty much just trying to take a step back in hopes of taking 2 steps forward. Let's put it like that.
Mm.
And 2 steps forward into a different industry. So it's
Yeah.
like starting kind of ground zero of like there's a bit of a confidence built up of like, okay, I've done this a few times before now, of
Mhm.
like being able to take an idea and just shoot my shot at it and see if it works. Sometimes
Mhm.
it does, sometimes it doesn't. And
Yeah.
with real estate, I'm kind of like, I don't know jack shit about real estate.
Yeah.
Um, I just
Well,
know that
you're about to.
I know that a lot of people have enormous amounts of wealth and passive income rolling in from that.
Yeah.
And it's just like you just have to go full send and spend a lot of time talking to a lot of people.
Yeah.
And that's why I
Well,
reached out to you.
yeah, I think
Um,
you might be pleasantly surprised in these following weeks because you are meeting one of my professors
oh yeah,
who is a big commercial investor. He's helped develop a lot of the sky rises downtown, and he's a big retail guy. So you guys might have some interesting things to talk
it's
about.
gonna be fun.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
I hope to have him on soon. He has some valuable insight, and I'm excited to see like what insights he shares just being in the industry for so long, and I hope you're able to pick up quite a bit from him. He's a really interesting guy.
yeah, it's just it'd be fun to learn more and more about it.
Mhm.
That a lot of other people have made it in that industry, and it's like there's you can't help but be curious about it. So it's
Yeah,
like
some
looking into it.
yeah, something around like 90 something percent of millionaires are made in real estate. Wild
Yeah. And I'm not
statistic.
sure. Okay, this is a different
Or have
conversation,
real
but like,
estate.
is $1 million even a goal? I feel like that's the question that a lot of
Mhm.
people really have to ask. 'Cause there's like there's a pretty big gap that I notice at least of like, people see all these millionaires
Mhm.
on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, like,
Yeah,
how I made $7 million at 21 years old, or
sure.
how I have so many properties opened up at a certain age. And you get these like exceptional stories of success that you catch online, and it's great to use for inspiration. But there's a massive gap. Like you look at it, and it seems all these people kind of who are in the millionaires' shoes, if you will, they look back at it and they're like, "Oh, well, this makes sense how it worked. Like I did this, and I did this, and I did this," and they make
Mhm.
it sound easy on paper, if you will.
Mhm.
But there's a massive gap between how difficult it is to actually get to that,
Yeah.
and people who just doom scroll per se. Um, and that's all to say was like it does require effort. I feel like
Mhm.
to be able to get to that. I have 100 doors and I have a three
Yeah.
hundred million dollar portfolio, whatever. Um, you have to have the drive per se to actually get into it, and really the best way to go about it is talk to people in industry. I feel like
Mhm.
who are either in the process of the grinding or are reaping the rewards, or in your same shoes of kind of just looking at into the industry and trying to see if it's
Yeah.
something that fits or not. And that goes along for really anything, not just real estate. Just any industry in general. It generally requires a lot more effort than people want to put in, if you will.
Hmm. Well,
It's
that's
a hot
awesome.
take, but I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's a good take. Okay. Well, do you have any? We'll go with this. We'll ask first. Is there any books that you'd like to read, or for the audience to read? Just hearing your story, and just any general advice. Second, what is the general advice that you want someone to take out of this conversation? Kind of a consensus, if you will. What would you want someone to learn from your story? And we'll kind of go with that.
Sure. Yeah, break apart this question. Book wise, honestly, it shocks quite a few people. I up until recently, I don't think I've ever read a book from cover to cover,
Oh, nice.
and recently, like 5 months. So I did not read at all. I kind of I grew up without. I don't know, American education system forces you to read books, but it's
Yeah.
usually by just like you have to read this book, and it's generally not very engaging.
Yeah.
So out of the few books I've read, I can say this goes off of personal interest, but the $100 million offers.
Oh yeah.
Alex
Wow,
Armoz.
Mosey.
It's a good book.
I like
You
it.
know, it breaks apart a lot of strategy, and kind of it's motivational, inspirational. You see this guy's journey, and it really kind of breaks apart how you can, you know, go from per se zero to hero if
Hmm.
you're willing to put the effort
Yeah.
in. That's business driven. And then I'd say another book I like. It's I forget what it's called. It's written by Matt Dahlia. He was a guy from Yes Theory.
Yes. Yes.
He has this like "Say Yes to Strangers," I think, or something like that.
Hmm.
But it's just a book once again highlighting their story of how it's like quite literally these young guys shooting their shot,
Yeah.
and somehow the stars aligned, and now they're successful YouTubers per se.
Hmm.
So yeah, 2 books, $100 million offers, and
Say yes.
talk to strangers.
Oh, talk to
Yeah,
strangers.
like that.
Okay.
And
Cool.
then
What about the consensus?
second question.
The consensus.
Consensus.
What do you want someone who doesn't know you, that's just hearing this for the first time, to really get from your story?
I think a lot of people talk about all these business ideas. They're like, I want to do this, I want to do that. Like, it's almost this American dream of like, at some point, I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to own
Yeah.
my own business. And I talk to a good amount of people, just customers walking in, who are like, oh, this is cool. Like, you've got your own little thing going for you. And I think a lot of people picture it as like they don't have the skills, or they don't have what's necessary to try and build a business, and they keep delaying this to where it's like, I'll talk to a guy like 3-4 years ago, and he's like, oh, I think it'd be so cool to start a business. I have this like idea right here, and I'm pretty passionate about it. It can work and all this, but like I don't think I have what it takes to start it. So they just keep pushing back these just ideas of trying to hit the goal, or maybe the goal is being pushed back, or they find like a comfort zone, and like, I go to school, I have like this routine. I'm not gonna take a step out and try and start a business.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people, there's something to be said about actually just trying. It it can be something simple. It doesn't have to be like the next Tesla. You don't have to create a massive product. That's a pretty big commitment, big endeavor. But if you go with the route of like an idea to generate income that has been proven before, detailing, car washing, lawn mowing, tutoring, babysitting services, like there's people who've made a lot of money on doing that. Just like commit to it, and instead of trying to justify like, oh, I can't do it because I don't know the tax liabilities, I can't do it because I don't know how to talk to people, I'm nervous to like selling or anything.
Mhm.
Just try. Like, quite literally, trying is what brings to any sort of result. Like, you have to take that first step, and once you're in it, you're like, oh, it's not that bad. And that's what I feel like, just looking back, has kind of worked for me amongst the different businesses that I started. It's just a matter of like, okay, we're going to commit to it. We're going to try. If it doesn't work, well, you maybe lose a little bit of money if it's a product-based business. If it's a service-based business, the only thing you've lost is time,
Mhm.
and you've gained experience or knowledge on the topic that you can apply going forward.
Yeah.
So give it a go. If you have a business idea you've been thinking about, just send it, try, and you'll be surprised at how many people are willing to support you, and it might grow into the next Tesla. Who knows?
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for hopping on, Andre. I really appreciate you sitting down and having this talk. And yeah, I guess I'll see you dancing soon.
Yeah, it's good stuff. I appreciate the time to chat a little
Awesome,
bit,
man.
and yeah, we'll see you on the dance floor.
All right. Sounds good.
Good stuff.